I was shocked by how much I loved this movie. And so Carson, I don't know if you saw, but James Gunn did, I don't know which, he's done multiple interviews this past week. I think the main one that everyone's been referring back to was with Rolling Stone, I believe, where they announced the casting and, like, I guess official confirmation of the Clayface movie. Tom Rise Harris, or Harry's, I don't know how to say that properly, is going to be playing Clayface. It's going to be rated R. At least that's the plan. Obviously, it hasn't been rated yet, but the plan is to go like gritty rated R. And so I'm curious to see where that goes. I'm not surprised. It honestly makes perfect sense with what they currently have planned in the Gods and Monsters like ethos, which is what they're having for this, like, I guess, phase of the DCU. And then there's one other thing that like was the big talk, but I'll let you, if you have anything to say about like the Clayface news.
Clayface, I think, is one of the most just like overall underrated Batman villains. I do think he's like a popular one, and I'm not saying that he's not popular, but I just feel like when you look at Batman's rogue gallery, you think of Joker, you think of Two-Face, you think of Bane, Scarecrow, even hardcore fans. I don't even know if this would count, but Mr. Freeze, Riddler, pretty much anybody who's in that original Catwoman. I always forget about Catwoman. Penguin. Those are Batman iconic villains. Clayface is iconic, but I do not ever think that Clayface has ever reached the height that some of those characters have.
Well, because Clayface hasn't really been like portrayed all that often in media. One thing that I didn't really think about until we literally sat down for this is you watched Creature Commandos, right?
Yes.
Clayface was in Creature Commandos, if you remember.
Voiced by Alan Tudyk of K2SO fame. Yes.
Really? Alan Tudyk voiced? So that's really interesting because I didn't realize that. I knew that this was like the first time that this person, that Ryan or whatever, had been announced as Clayface. But one of the big things that I didn't think about until we sat down to record this, and I don't know if James Gunn has talked about, is the whole point of this DCU is that everyone will be played by the same, like, every time a character shows up, they will be played by the same person. So the, like, John Cena is Peacemaker in animation, in live action, and whatever. Like the cast of Creature Commandos, who have already been confirmed to come in live action, are being played by the people they were voiced by. So that's really interesting that we do have Clayface in Creature Commandos. And I don't know, maybe let me pull up the article while you talk on this a little bit. I thought that this was supposed to be the canon Clayface. So that's really interesting because we already know that Creature Commandos is canon.
Well, we also know that Peacemaker Season 2 is going to address a lot of things connecting, the old canon with the DC EU and now the DCU, or Snyderverse and Gunverse, because obviously Peacemaker was born in technically the Snyderverse, but they're going to rewrite it somehow so that Peacemaker has always been in the Gunverse or whatever they're coming up with. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Creature Commandos to a certain extent has some type of logic in the same way to then write out Alan Tudyk as the role. The only thing that I'm kind of confused about when they did announce it, I'm not saying anything against the actor. I'm sure he's going to do a phenomenal job. But I remember them saying that Alan Tudyk was Clayface, that he was 100% the role. That wasn't going to change. Like I remember that being a thing.
Yeah, that's again, and I'm not seeing anything. I just like speed read through the article. There's nothing saying that it's not canon. But there's nothing saying that it is, at least that I'm seeing. So I guess that's what's interesting about it, is I'm not seeing anything that is confirming that it's canon or anything that's confirming that
Sure.
it's not canon. So that does give them some
Sure.
wiggle room, because we already know that Robert Pattinson's Batman, which is getting a Batman 2, which James Gunn did talk about, is 99 point. That's actually technically, excuse me, the second thing that a lot of people took out of this article was that James Gunn spoke about bringing in Batman into the DC ethos, and he said that while he does agree that Batman is I mean, he's like the quintessential DC character. You have Batman and Superman; they're like the two. It's like
Correct.
Spider-Man for Marvel.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing that he mentioned that I really liked is that he never once bringing in any character, let alone Batman, to feel forced. So while they don't, while they are basically certain that Robert Pattinson's Batman is not going to be the Batman that they have in there, they also want their Batman to come in, make sense, and also be very like, they don't want him to be campy Batman, but they also don't want him to be like the gritty kills everyone Batman.
The
Like
Robert
that happy
Pattinson
middle
Batman.
ground, from what I understand.
Honestly, well, and I think because we've as a society have
Well, I
just
think they're going like less Robert Pattinson, because Robert Pattinson is starting out as Batman, and also he is a lot darker and grittier. That Batman that they went with in the like Gotham that they built out is a lot darker and grittier, and from what I understand, they're not wanting to go that far.
No,
Even.
well, because our entire society has only ever had one type of Batman: the comic book campy Batman, or
I mean,
the
Dark Knight
realistic,
wasn't
or the
campy at all.
well, that's what I was getting to, or the realistic Nolan Batman, or we've gotten the overly dark and then sometimes campy Ben Affleck, who never found the middle ground with his Batman. And now we have Robert Pattinson, which goes right back to a realistic but a lot more gritty version of Nolan's Batman. And it's the only interpretation of Batman I've ever seen that's actually honestly pretty accurate is the animated series, which I haven't seen all of. I've seen handful bits and pieces of. And honestly, even though it's still a bit more gritty, the Arkham video games have done a pretty good job of being faithful to what Batman actually is.
Well, I think here's the thing. That statement's very interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned it, but I think it's a very misnomer. Or I don't want to say misnomer. When you have characters like Batman and Superman who have been in the public mind for I think Superman's 100 years, right? At least Superman's 100 years.
Superman, I think, is about to be 100 years, or
And
he is 100 years now. Yeah.
and Batman not that long after, so decades at the very least for both of them. There have been so many different iterations of these characters that I guess one thing that these writers have to ask themselves is, what is Batman? Who is Batman? Because let's go back to what is Superman? You think, oh well, Superman flies, he shoots laser beams, he's a symbol of America, like all these things. Superman did not fly when he was first introduced. Superman leaped tall bounds. Superman leaped over buildings. Superman did not fly in his first iteration. So you thinking, oh, well, Superman at his core is flight. Well, if you're going off of original Superman, no, he's not. And it goes back to with Batman as well. They've all had so many different iterations with the multiverse and different writers and different like takes on these characters that one thing that I think is very freeing, but also very difficult for any writer of anything is asking yourself, what makes this character themselves? Like, what are the core aspects other than their look? And the thing is even their looks have changed slightly, like marginally over time, but ultimately all the characters' looks have been pretty standard since the beginning. That is one of those things that is relatively standard. And other than that, you have a lot more campy Batmans. You have a lot more gritty dark Bat. You have Batmans that kill. You have Batman that doesn't kill. Everyone says like, oh, at Batman's core, Batman doesn't kill. Batman has killed in stories before. Granted, you can call those Elseworlds, but that's still Batman.
Right. And well, and here's the biggest thing. And this is I'm looking at it from like a filmmaking perspective now. in comic books, you have so many different variations, iterations, multiversal variants of Batman. But you can have so many different stories and take Batman in so many different directions. It doesn't matter what the tone is. It doesn't matter what this is. One of the best Spider-Man stories is when Spider-Man isn't even really truly Spider-Man at his core. With isn't it Brand New Day? Spider-Man Brand New Day, or is it One
Yeah,
Day
the one
More?
it's the one that they're adapting into the movie, the Spider-Man 4,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
everyone forgets who Spider-Man is. In this universe, it's because of Doctor Strange. In the other universe, in the comics, it's because of Mephisto. That one.
Well, and what I'm saying is you have aspects of Spider-Man in that story, but it is not 100% Spider-Man because it's a very darker toned story because of the type of story they're trying to tell. And what I'm trying to get at here is in a film, you need the tone in, let's say, a Justice League movie to be the exact same tone and the exact same type of wavelength throughout the entire movie. Characters like Batman and Superman don't exactly have the exact same tone in their stories. They can,
Well,
but they don't like all the way through. And that's actually where I give credit to films like the Lego Batman movie, or to a
mhm,
certain extent, Batman v Superman. Again, I don't like Batman v Superman that much. I like aspects of that film because it's fun to watch Batman and Superman be there. But at least that film did have a consistent tone and it was dark. It was gritty. Even though Superman shouldn't be
yeah.
dark and gritty, at least it was. Lego Batman movie was very campy. Everybody was campy in that movie. So it worked very, very well. Gunn has a hard task on his hands because now, if they were to bring in Pattinson's Batman, which I hope they don't, and they were bringing what they're trying to bring in with David Cornsweet's Superman, they are
Yeah.
two different tones that don't clash. And honestly, that's kind of because of the Penguin's fault. Not even so much the Batman. That's the Penguin's fault because they made the Penguin, and that is such a grounded in reality type of television show. It's not even really fair to call the Penguin comic booky because it really isn't. It has a bat signal at the end of the show. That's the only reference to Batman. The entire rest
Well,
of the show is a mob crime family drama. You
yeah.
can't have
Well,
those
and
two connect.
so here's my argument. I agree with you to a certain extent on, like, there is a reason why you can't bring in Pattinson. Why am I struggling to say that name? Robert Pattinson's Batman into the DCU, because there are aspects of that world that are very difficult to mesh with other aspects of things, like, again, with Cornsweet's version of Superman, and in the world that it seems that they're building, it wouldn't really mesh all that well.
No,
However, and this is where I think, from my perspective, and again, I've taken a single film class in my life. I've taken literary classes, but I am not a writer. I am not a filmmaker. I am just a fan of a lot of things.
sure.
However, from my perspective, one of the most difficult things that you have with building out a connected universe, and this is something that Marvel did really, really well, in my opinion, in the beginning, and that's why those first 10 years of Marvel were exceptional,
Sure.
is you can have differently toned characters in differently toned individual movies. The hardest thing you have with that is, one, your world needs to be consistent. Your
Yes.
characters can be different themselves. You can have a
Yep.
campy Thor in a serious Robert Downey Jr. Have them exist in the same, like, world. But if you have a world where in this part of the world it's the dark, gritty, everything sucks, and in this part of the world you have sunshine and rainbows, it's very difficult to get that world to mesh.
Sure.
Those characters, however, when you have them cross over, and you have instances like an Avengers #1 or even an Avengers 2, whatever have you, it's really actually interesting to see those types of characters interact, because what you never want to do, in my opinion, is, okay, let's say you have a really dark Batman and a really campy Superman, and you
Right.
put them in a movie together, but your tone of your movie is very campy to go along with
Sure.
Superman. So you change Batman, who's the same Batman in canon Batman, to be campy to fit into the film. I think that is a
Sure.
terrible way of filmmaking. I think it becomes more interesting to see the characters interact with each other, where you have a really campy Batman or a really campy Superman and a really campy or a really dark Batman interact with each other as those characters and watch their personalities clash.
Well, we're gonna get a variation of that because this is the last bit of news that we got. With this is more flipping to the Marvel side of things, but we had confirmation that uh John Bernthal's Punisher is going to be in Spider-Man 4.
Yes.
He is officially a player in that story, and that's a really interesting one, especially coming off of Born Again. We saw Punisher, and not only did we see Punisher, we saw Punisher fight. Bloody, gruesome
Mhm.
headshots and limbs all over the place, and I loved it. That is Punisher, and even in his show, which is canon, because obviously the original Punisher show was canon. I'm very curious to see how they translate that over to Spider-Man, because it's just interesting. Because I think they're trying to make Spider-Man for a grounded story now. I think I read that somewhere that they actually kind of went back and they rewrote it to be a more grounded story. It's actually no longer a multiversal story.
I don't think Brand New Day was supposed to ever be a multiversal story. From what I understood, it was always, and I think that picks up and makes sense based off of the way that Spider-Man 3 ends, with him
Yeah.
making his own suit from scratch, having that more stereotypical Spider-Man look, swinging through Brooklyn, type
Yeah,
of vibe.
there were just a lot of reports, and I think I remember one executive in like an interview because it blew up for a bit, and people were getting really upset about it. But I remember there was a hot second where everybody was freaking out because somebody had leaked that it was a multiversal movie, and then there was an executive who kind of like backed it up, like, "Oh yeah, we saw the success of No Way Home. We're gonna try to recreate that with another multiversal movie." It's part of the reason why when Sadie Sink was cast, everybody thought, "Oh, she's gonna be MJ," but it's gonna be Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst's daughter, and it's going to be like a completely different version of MJ in that universe. That like I remember those reports coming out when that happened, and then I remember reading one like a few months ago saying, "Yeah, Marvel is now learning from their mistake and is going to correct it to be a grounded story, like everybody
Mhm.
wants it to be." Which I don't fully know what's actually correct, what's incorrect. I'm not in Marvel. I'm not an
I
insider.
mean, we're
I
not
don't
gonna know till
know.
the first trailer comes out realistically. But I think that
Correct. Yeah.
bringing up the Marvel side of things, and to end off this portion of the conversation, I think it's I think a perfect example of this that is going to happen. We already have it. I mean, I don't think it's technically confirmed, but it doesn't take a genius to figure it out that Deadpool is going to interact with the wider MCU.
Yes.
Deadpool is rated R. If you watch Deadpool and Wolverine, he is literally using, like, tearing people to shreds, dropping every like word
Yeah.
in the dictionary. Like,
Correct. Yeah.
how do you incorporate Deadpool into a PG-13, presumably Secret Wars? Because I don't think he's going to come in Doomsday. I think he's going to come in Secret Wars.
Yeah.
How do you incorporate that into the MCU? And obviously, that's yet to be seen. But those are the types of challenges that I find really interesting from a storytelling perspective, but also very challenging in the sense of it's very easy to go, we had a PG-13 Deadpool, and a lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah.
Um, we actually had two different versions of a PG-13 Deadpool. We had a PG-13 Ryan Reynolds Deadpool with the like whole Christmas storytelling, whatever BS that they
Yeah.
did. And
Yeah.
we had a PG-13 Deadpool when they did the X-Men movies, with also, funny
Yeah.
enough, Ryan Reynolds.
But it
Um,
was X-Men Origins. Yeah.
correct,
That's
X-Men
different.
Origins. And I think it's they both did it very poorly. So I think that puts a lot of pressure on this team to find that balance. And again, that goes back to with whatever version of Batman they have, going like wrapping up this conversation where we started.
Yeah.
I want to see, I mean, personally, and I'm trying to think of like a comic book example of this, but I want to see a like been doing this for 10 years, is stat like I don't want another Batman origin story. We don't need it. I don't think we're not getting
No.
a Superman origin story. I don't want origin stories for all these characters. I want pre-established in this world characters.
Right.
I want him to be honestly like ready to start up the Justice League stuff, because I don't think that what we see in Superman is the Justice League. I think that's the Justice Society. I don't know if that's
Yes.
confirmed or not. It is. Okay, that's what I thought based on
Well,
the characters that they had present,
I don't
but
think I don't
it
know if
also
it's
makes sense.
confirmed. I will the only and this is my last thing, especially because you brought up Justice Society. Peacemaker, or no, sorry, not Peacemaker. Shazam 2 had a post-credit scene after Peacemaker season 1 came out. And it literally was the two friends from the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. I forget the names, but it's the blonde woman and the like orange bearded friend. Whatever.
Yeah.
They come in and talk to Shazam about, joining the Justice Society. And whether Shazam is actually, going to be canon to Gunn's new universe.
Imagine if we see Zachary Levi in Superman. Like, that would be insane.
I don't hate Zachary Levi.
I'm
I
not
actually
ruling it
really like him
out.
as Shazam. I
No,
love that
I
first
think
Shazam
Zachary
movie. I thought it was really
Levi.
fun.
I think. I don't even remember if I ever saw the second movie. Funny enough, my mom brought up the first Shazam movie when I was back in Florida last week for the family event. I don't even remember how it came up, but my mom brought up it was like, I actually really liked the Shazam movie. Like, I thought that was like a really good like movie. It was very like family
Sure.
oriented. Like, she really liked the Shazam movie, and a lot of that is driven by Zachary Levi. I really like Zachary Levi in that
Sure.
movie. So I would be really, I'd love to see him come back and continue that role through whatever means they have to with multiversal BS, which
Right.
again, we
Yeah.
already have confirmed to be a plot line, both in Superman and mainly in Peacemaker.
Right. Or it could just be a
So
campy thing, and because it's John Cena, they could just pull like a campy thing of like, oh, yep, no, this has actually been in Peacemaker's mind the whole time. This never existed. Please enjoy the new universe, which is the real universe, which
wasn't that
that also
I
wouldn't
don't know if
surprise
this was
me.
confirmed, but wasn't that the whole idea behind that whole Justice League thing at the end of the first season of Peacemaker, is that
Yeah.
it was supposed to be in his head or whatever? Um
I
I thought that was
they
like what I
could
had
do that.
heard.
I don't know. I just hope they don't cut any of the actual like the Suicide Squad bits, because again,
Mhm.
like there's a lot of also I'm a big defender of that movie. I loved that movie when it came out. I thought it was one of the
Oh,
best
I thought
superhero
it was
movies,
great.
period. And I think that, I love Margot Robbie in that role. I loved Idris Elba as Bloodsport. And I think one of the biggest, this is confirmed, but the biggest plot point of Peacemaker season 2 is the fact that uh, it's dealing with Rick Flag Sr. And after the
Mhm.
death of Rick Flag, he is now on the hunt basically to get rid of Christopher Smith. And I don't know. So I'm really curious to see where they handle like what's canon, what's not. And I think Peacemaker is going to be like the line in the sand for that. And, Superman, Batman, whatever they decide to do with that, it's all up in the air. They've got options, they've got choices. Just make the right ones. Don't screw it up. you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just very excited. We're getting 2 DC things this year or technically I guess we got 3 because Creature Commandos I think was earlier this
Yeah,
year, right? Or was that
it
yeah.
was.
And then we're getting Superman and we're getting Peacemaker. So, and I really enjoyed Creature Commandos. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really interesting decision to make as your start of the the DCU, but we'll see where that goes. And I mean, we're going to talk about that on this podcast. We're going to talk about Peacemaker and Superman as they release. But
Yep.
that's not what we're talking about this week, because what's up, Nimrods? It's your boys back with another episode 16 of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast. My name is Brandon, aka Parrotfish, here with my co-host, as always,
Carson, aka Juggernaut.
And this week, we only have a single movie review because Carson is lazy and did not want to see Phoenician Scheme like I told him to, even though I think he would love this movie. There was also no other TV shows because Ironheart comes out next week. So next week will be actually we'll talk about what next week is, but Ironheart will be one of those things later on at the end of this episode. This week, it is our Elio review. Very different than any other movie reviewed. This is a Disney Pixar movie. This is actually, we were talking about this before we started recording. This is my first Disney Pixar movie since Onward, which I think was like a 2019 movie, if I'm not mistaken. 2019.
2020. It was during
Okay, I
COVID
thought
because
maybe it was either 2019 or 2020.
it was just before lockdown because we had our fun little friend group who we saw everything like fresh out of theaters with, and then that group disbanded immediately once COVID hit because everybody either went on to do different things or people just left, So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what we'll be reviewing Elio this week. But before that, Carson, how you doing? How's your week been?
It's been a very long week. We got a new dog, so we have a new dog running around the house. It's great. But he's also like 8 months old and he's a puppy. And then all of a sudden, everybody in my household decides to go on vacation the week we get the dog. So I am stuck taking care of the dog. And he's a bundle of joy. He's really sweet. He's really cute. But I definitely have had my fill of taking care of this dog.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Hopefully you'll be relieved of that duty soon.
I will not. My folks are literally going on vacation again next week. So I will not.
I thought your parents still worked. Are they just taking all of their PTO at once?
Yep. I wish I could say something else. Nope. Yep. That's exactly what's happening.
Nice. Well, it's funny because I was talking with Carson. I had an all right week. It was whatever. But before we started, I was trying to make homemade chicharrones and I failed gloriously. And I thought, and Carson doesn't know this yet, I thought that I was gonna have to throw all this away and that it was a waste of like $45 of a pork belly. I realized that I can save it, and that is exactly what I'm gonna do after recording this. I'm pretty sure I can save my dinner and my $45 investment in this pork belly. I know how to do it. It's probably gonna set off the smoke alarm a few times because my smoke alarms are way too fucking sensitive.
Love that.
But it does mean quite positive news for me, hopefully, maybe. I don't know. But yeah,
the depression is over. He's back.
yes, hopefully, maybe. Yeah, but that's my update. I have actually quite a few things I want to talk about at the end of this episode in terms of things to look forward to.
Right.
But we'll keep that for the end of this episode. I will go ahead and just get into the review of Elio. So, like I had mentioned, this is actually, before we do that, spoiler warning. There might be like aspects of this review that are like spoiler free, but we don't worry about not having spoilers. So we will definitely talk in depth about this movie. If you have not seen this movie yet, this is not the episode for you. Skip past this, watch the movie, come back. I actually, and this is a spoiler for my review, I think you absolutely should see this movie. I'm not necessarily saying you have to go out and spend $1 million to see this in theaters, but at the very least, if you have a way to see this either in theaters, if you have a pass or you want to buy the tickets, or you are going to wait until it comes out on streaming, I think you absolutely should. So if you have not already, this is your warning. Go see the movie, come back, watch this episode, hear our thoughts. But getting into a little bit, like, I guess, deeper before we obviously have our normal back and forth, I was shocked by how much I loved this movie. In fact, like, I thought Pixar, like, I can't even remember the Onward was the last Pixar movie I saw. I enjoyed Onward, but that's also because I'm a D&D fantasy fan, and that was what Onward was. I don't think Onward was a fantastic, perfect movie by like every standard, but I think it was a very good for what it was trying to do. I heard that Going Red was pretty good. Other than that, like, I did not want to see Lightyear. Honestly, I thought they should have stopped making Toy Stories after, like, what are they on? 5 now? I think they had a good trilogy. Stop at that. Don't need any more. Stop milking that cash cow. So I'm not gonna say I was like Debbie Downer on everything, and honestly, I wasn't even sure if we were gonna do a review of this movie. What kind of prompted me to be like, "Hey, Carson, let's watch this movie," is when I was sitting in theaters and you have that obligatory 30-minute ad roll, it came up. And I honestly forgot about this movie. I totally was not in my consciousness, and it came up, and I was watching it, and I was like, this actually doesn't look that bad. Like, this looks like it could be a decent movie to watch, but I still wasn't like all that gung ho for it. And
Sure.
then the first round of like reviews came out like a week ago or whatever, because they always have like the early screeners and reviews. And while a lot of people weren't reviewing this movie, the few people that were had really good things to say about this movie. Unfortunately, our favorite reviewer, Coy, hasn't done a review, and I don't think he is because this isn't his typical type of movie.
Our supreme leader, Coy Jandro, did not make a review yet.
Correct. Well, it's funny. It's actually in the dryer right now. Otherwise, I would be wearing it. I bought my first piece of YouTube content creator merch ever, and it is a Hello Ya Lovelies Koi hoodie that I will in fact be wearing to anything that I go. Like, I love that hoodie. It's very comfortable. I got it like a little bit larger than I typically would, but I love it. So yeah, our supreme leader Koi. But anyway, a lot of people were pretty high on it, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely like my expectations are a little bit higher, but I still tried to go in like, okay, let's see where this takes us. And I don't know what it was, but first of all, it's beautiful. I don't think any of the
Yeah.
recent Pixar movies, again, I haven't seen them, but even just from their trailers, they've all looked spectacular. So I don't think that was ever really a fear. But I think
Yeah.
the world that they build out with the alien races and things like that, beautiful. It's very creative. Obviously, there's only so much creativity that you can have when building out alien species because everything's been done before, but I think they did a good job with that. The story is where this movie really shines, though. I think it has a
Yeah.
phenomenal message to tell. I think it does it very, very well. I think this movie is really well paced. It's not, it is an hour and 40 minutes, including like the end credits and stuff like that, which there is a mid credit scene of this movie. I didn't stay. I don't think there's an end credit scene, but there is a mid credit scene. Um, so again, it's about an hour and 40, and I think start to finish, I just had a great time. There were unfortunately like almost zero other people in the theater with me. There was like one family of three, like at like a few rows in front of me, one like a random other dude in the front row, and then like three people behind me, and that was it. But I also saw this movie on Thursday at like, what did I see it at? Like 8:30 p.m. So like not when
Sure.
families are going to be going to the movie theater.
Sure.
So I don't know. I bring that up to say I don't know how well this movie is going to do in theaters because again, I don't see a lot of people talking about it. But I hope it gets the time that it deserves. I do hope that if anyone watches this, even though we don't really have that many viewers, I hope that people take away from this that this is a movie worth seeing. Like,
Yes.
and again, we'll get into
Yes.
deeper details as to why when we go into our back and forth, but I just wanted to get that out of the way because I think that this has a very important story to tell, and I think it's one that people need to hear. So Carson,
Yeah.
I'll kick it off to you to get your thoughts.
I just want to, before I start going into my thoughts, because you had said like I don't know how well this movie's gonna do. Yeah, it has the worst opening in Pixar's history. I know that because I just read it on Instagram earlier this morning,
Yeah,
which
not
doesn't
surprising.
surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. I don't even think that's just because that's not the movie though. I think that's generally just because people just don't have an interest to go to the movies anymore. And with
Mhm.
the last few Pixar entries, nobody really wants any Pixar movies right now either. The the last few Pixar movies that I watched were Onward when I watched that in theaters. Then COVID hit. I watched Luca at home because I was also streaming. I watched Soul at home, which was
Oh,
streaming.
Was Luca after Onward? Because I have seen Luca. I
Luca,
have seen Luca. I watched that with my
Luca,
family.
Luca was after Onward. That but like I
Okay.
watched all of those other than Onward. I watched all of those two. I watched Soul and Luca at home, and then
Oh, I've
I
also seen
watched
Soul. Okay, I guess I just haven't seen Going Red. I think that's I guess that and Lightyear, I guess, are the only two I haven't seen.
Turning Red. I hated. I actually walked out of that movie. I couldn't watch it. I just thought it was extremely bland and boring. If people like that film, I'm not going to hold anything against you. I don't know what it was about that film. I just found it boring, and I really couldn't stand it. Luca, I thought was very cute. It was fun, and then Soul, I think is just it should have been released in theaters and it would have done so well. It's so unfortunate that
Yeah.
it wasn't. Um, Elio is actually the first Pixar film, probably since maybe Coco, in which I was like, okay, that's very creatively well done. The story is really well done. And I did not expect that. I actually expected going into this film to hate this movie. Mostly because of
Mhm.
what Pixar has done in just the past few years. I just don't really like much of what they've decided to do or the stories they tried to tell. Um, I thought Elio had a very beautiful message. I thought it had a very beautiful story to share and tell. Visually, it was stunning. Um, and there's really not like I don't have like that much to complain about Elio. That being said, it is probably out of all my Pixar rankings, because I actually ranked this with a bunch of friends after I watched the movie, like the day after we sat down, we made a tier list. Uh, Elio is better than Luca. It is either my 9th or 10th favorite Pixar movie of all time, and it is directly in the middle of Pixar movies because not because it's bad, just because it doesn't reach the heights as some of these other Pixar movies have. And I think overall, go see this movie in theaters. Take the time, go watch it. It is well worth your time. It is not just another animated movie. It is very, very good, and you will enjoy it. You'll laugh. Um, you'll have a very fun time. The story, like I said, the story is very creative. It's an uplifting story. Um, and I think that it's very much worth your time. I don't think it's something that should just be saved for streaming.
Yeah.
Um, I just this film just doesn't reach the height that other Pixar movies though. So do
Well,
go into
and
this movie knowing it's not the next Toy Story. It's not the next Monsters Inc. It's not the next Incredibles. You know, it's not going to ever reach
well,
the
yeah,
heights of those films, but those were incredible films that did something completely different. That being said, Elio is still really good. Like I have a like it's like a weird balance because I'm not trying to be negative on it, but I'm also not trying to be super positive because it's not like the grandest story ever told. It's just very cute and fun, and you can have a great time with it. And it most certainly is not Lightyear. What an abysmal movie that was.
Well, and I
God.
think that's something that's important to know because when you said like, oh, 8 or 9, like I don't know where I'd rank this honestly. Again, I haven't seen Inside Out 2. Loved Inside Out 1, but never saw Inside Out 2. Never saw
Yeah.
Going Red. I haven't seen what other ones I haven't seen. I haven't seen Lightyear. I think those are really just the three that I haven't seen. But when you're going up against competition like the Cars movies and Wall-E and The Incredibles and things like that. Like, yeah, it makes sense that this is not like, yes, I love this movie. It doesn't top like an Incredibles 1 or even honestly an Incredibles 2. Um, but it's definitely better than some of the other movies that I didn't even take the time to go see because people rated them so bad.
There are
And
some
I guess
films I
maybe that's
actually had
unfair on me.
to
I can't rate them because I haven't seen them, but
Sure. There are some films I actually had to go through because objectively, when we were making this tier list, I had to look at a film and go, "Is Elio better than it?" Yes. Um, like for an example, there are two classic, Pixar movies that I do think Elio is significantly better than. One of them being Up. I'm not saying anything bad about Up, but people often confuse the first 10 minutes of Up with the rest of the movie Up. The first 10 minutes are beautiful, masterful. The rest of the movie is good, but it's nowhere near what the first 10 minutes are, and people overhype it because of those first 10 minutes. The other movie is Cars. I like Cars. I do. I do not think Cars is as good as it really is made out to be. I think there are so many better Pixar films and so much more creative Pixar films. Ratatouille, Wally. Wally is the biggest example of something being very creative.
I think Wally is
Uh,
is is honestly unmatched. If I had to rate my number one Pixar movie, it would be Wally. I think that's pretty easy for me.
I can't
Um,
argue that. My favorite's Monsters Inc., but even I won't like argue somebody. If somebody says Wally, I won't argue it
that's
because I
fair.
understand why.
That's
I
fair.
understand why Wally would be somebody's favorite. Even The Incredibles. However, films after that, you could make an argument that, you know, it, Inside Out, Coco. I'll even throw Inside Out 2 in there because I really enjoyed Inside Out 2. Those may not be as good. Or no, those are better than Elio, but almost everything else Elio is better than, and it's not even really that close for me.
I mean, here's what I'll say to that. And maybe this is a controversial opinion, maybe it's not. I would put Elio like on par with something like a Coco, or maybe a little below an Inside Out, because I do think Inside Out, at least the first one, was like a really good modern Pixar movie. But like,
Sure.
if you want to bring like Coco into the conversation, like I think that, and maybe it's just because they both have like a story of family to tell. I think Pixar movies are like a core metric of a Pixar movie is really family in a lot of ways. Not
Sure.
everyone, but whether that be found family or in the sense of Cars, or real family, like in the sense of Onward was about like bringing back the
Right.
dad. You
Right.
have Inside Out being about like family, and granted you have other aspects in there, but a lot of it does have to do with family. I would say Coco was a really good story. Had again a lot to do with family. I would
Right.
say Elio is kind of on par, and they're very different stories. But if you think about it, kid feels ostracized from his family because of XYZ reason, goes to faraway place to try and find something, whether that be a place of belonging or a reason for family or whatever have you.
Sure.
Turns out that they want to stay and whatever. Like, it does follow a lot of the same story beats. But I think that one thing that makes, and do you have anything else you want to say before we start the back and forth on this? Because I'll start getting into
Uh,
the
I was just gonna talk about how the only thing I don't like about Coco is the twist villain. That's like my biggest complaint with that movie. I know a lot of people like
yeah,
that.
I think that's fair.
I think that was the moment where I was like, okay, I'm done with twist villains. You've done too many of them. Please don't do them again. And that was like a big example. I before we get in, like as you're talking about this, because just for so the audience knows where I'm at, I put Elio on par with the exact same feeling I walked out of Luca that I do Elio. I, Coco is also really close to Luca and Elio too for me though. I think all three of those films are pretty relatively close in regards to like just my personal enjoyment, emotional value, what I gained out of it, which isn't bad. Those films are really really well done. But that's just where that's just where I sit with it.
Okay, that's fair. Um, well, so and I guess we can do this similar to how we do our other stuff, which isn't again an exact like retelling of the story, but kind of like starting from the start
No,
and going through a
yeah,
lot of the major story beats, just kind of to give us a through line. I think that the initial like concept of this movie, which if you don't know, which why are you watching this review, because we told you to stop watching and go watch the movie,
right, right,
um is essentially kid's family dies in an accident, never find out what it is, but honestly it's not important, so you don't really need to. It's
no,
just
right,
it's just that kind of family died, move on. It doesn't matter to the story. And I'm glad that we didn't spend a lot of time on that, like getting a flashback or getting like a bunch of exposition. Like, no, the kid's family's dead. That's all you need to know. That's the only
right,
thing you need to know, is that the kid's family died and now he's being taken care of by his aunt. And the aunt is in the military. She's in this universe's version of Space Force. She is
right,
specifically monitoring space debris, and essentially guiding like spacecraft through fields and monitoring things and making sure. Because if you did not know, a real problem that we have in the world that we live in is we've sent so much stuff into space, like so much more than you even think we have. We've probably spent like 15 times more than that into space. And a lot of portions of the outer atmospheres of the world, of Earth, is full of random junk. Decommissioned satellites, boosters from rockets, things of that nature that's still orbiting space. So anytime you launch something into space, you have to be very careful about how you navigate
sure,
that to not
right.
destroy. Now, I don't think it's as bad necessarily as the world of Elio like portrays it to be in reality, but again, I'm not an
Right.
expert, so I don't know.
Right, right.
Um But I say all that to say, like, that's what his aunt does. His aunt's in the military and taking care of Elio, the main character, the main boy, who is, I'd assume, in middle school. That
Middle
age
school,
range.
I think he might be a little
Elementary school,
younger.
middle's like around that age range, very young. And Elio's obsessed with aliens because he feels like he doesn't belong anymore. And I think that's one of the reasons that really hits me really hard is that sense of like belonging, especially as it of recently moving halfway across the country, living like without much family up here, and feeling like an outsider and like you don't belong, or like you're not wanted type of thing. And
Sure, right.
Elio tells that story. It tells the story of a boy who's obsessed with aliens because he feels like that's the only place, like Earth doesn't want him anymore. His family's dead. They were the only people who ever cared about him and whoever wanted him.
Sure.
So therefore, the next logical conclusion in this kid's mind is aliens. And eventually, after many attempts, he successfully gets abducted by aliens. And that's where we kind of
That's
kick off the
right.
main portion of this story.
Well, and I'm gonna say this because I only have a very few complaints with this film, and the first one is actually the beginning. The set up of the actual idea for like why Elio, feels like an outsider, this that is in the beginning kind of rushed. I almost wish they would have added one or two more scenes of either just like explaining like his love for aliens to begin with, because like they do a really good job in the beginning of making you understand why he feels like an outsider, but it's not like immediately. The first scene you get with him is he's eating lunch with his aunt is it like a museum? Is it a museum or is he on like whatever site that she's
Yeah,
working at?
it's in a museum. It's in a
Okay.
museum.
Point being, you don't find out at all that he has any sort of connection to aliens or love for aliens until he walks into that room. I feel like it would have made
Yeah,
a
but that's in the
much
first like
better
30 seconds of the movie. That's like
but that
really quickly in the movie.
there's like a whole 3 minute to 2 minute scene that kicks off, and he doesn't say a single line, which that works for the idea of he's feeling isolated, but you have
Mhm.
no idea or care for his care for aliens because you've never you didn't give it enough time in the oven to cook a little bit. And I'm saying this minorly because they got the point across, but it was almost very sloppily thrown together. Almost like when you're baking a cake. It's like, yeah, I
Well,
think one egg will be good enough for this. Let's just get it in there. Let's see what happens. It seemed very, very sloppy when they put it together. Um, and so that's like my real only complaint with the beginning part of the movie. And there's not really like another complaint I have with the rest of the movie beyond that. But because of that, it did kind of create a little bit of an impact later on for like the emotional value of the movie. Most Pixar movies, I'm a pretty emotional person. I've been very vocal about that. I didn't really feel all that much emotion. I just felt like an at peace, like I'm very happy and content with the ending. I didn't feel really
I
anything
cried.
emotional. I didn't. And I just think that that's because of the emotional, like they just didn't do the best job feeding the emotional. They went for more of the happy, content. We're all very, very we're ending on a very positive note. I mean, most Pixar movies do, but you get what I mean. And so that's my only real complaint with the film. There's one at the very end I'll explain, and it's more so just like once you think about it, it's like, oh wait, you're right. But we'll get to that
Well,
later. Please go ahead.
so I'll go ahead and I'll save when I cried because it was obviously towards the end of the movie for when we get to that portion. But I did
It was the
cry, and
beginning. It was the beginning when I
there's a
realized I had to
reason.
watch the movie.
No, there was a reason that I cried, and I'll get into that. And I can understand why every emotional beat didn't hit for everyone. Um, but no, I understand. Like I will play devil's advocate here though in terms of the movie because I did not feel that way at all. I felt like this movie set up his love for aliens perfectly, and I think that's one thing you have to remember is he is in the beginning of this movie maybe 6 to 7 years old. And basically throughout the entire course of the movie, I think he's like maybe 6 to 10 years old is the age range that I'd have to guess. Kids don't have a big buildup to their interests in things. Kids just throw themselves. They see a cool shiny disc or a cool shiny thing in a museum and they dedicate their entire life to it, at least for a year, and then they throw it out and never think about it again. I know I did in many occasions. I mean, heck, before becoming a computer scientist, I wanted to be a marine biologist, a chef, a firefighter. I wanted to do every single job. You dedicate a bunch of time to it and then you throw it out like it was nothing. And I think that's something you have to like remember. And that's why I didn't feel that at all in sense of, oh, this feels rushed, just because, yeah, that is how a kid finds interest in something. Because I don't think he had any interest in space until he went to this museum. But then he went to this museum, saw this really cool thing, heard that, oh, there might be life in space. Oh, I'm some dumb idiot kid. I want to find out if there's life in space. Like, that's how that works at that age. That is literally the process into which you get into something at that age. So I didn't really have that complaint at all, because I thought it made perfect sense of like, yeah, he was just into aliens. Cool. But I do think that bringing in like the real life aspects of the like, because that spaceship that they sent out with the satellite is actually something that I believe it's the Voyager, is actually something that we sent out into space, and that is currently
it's a real thing.
Light years and light years and light years away from us.
Yes. I greatly appreciated that aspect in the movie. And I'm not like that big of like a stickler for like history or it has to 100% match up. I've never been that. But I've always been very appreciative of it, you know? And so I'm very appreciative that the movie actually took the time to think through and incorporate the real life aspects, the real world aspects. Cause it also kind of just like, it pulled me into the world a bit more because I know these things are real and it makes me feel more connected to these characters in this world that they set up because of the fact that, you know, this is a real world thing that I know of. I say that about a movie about aliens kidnapping a kid, but you know, it feels real. But you get what I mean.
Having one singular element to latch onto, and this movie has multiple, because obviously the Space Force is real. The whole like, there's a lot of realism in this movie that I think, and that's one of the reasons that I actually really appreciated about this movie, and one of the reasons that I feel like the way that they told the story was really good is, while you have this citadel of aliens that apparently are like the smartest minds in the universe and what have you, you have that aspect of the movie, but you also have the second aspect of this movie that's the actual heart and core of this movie that is kept very grounded, very realistic in the way that it's portrayed, that allows you to enjoy the because if everything in this movie felt overblown and fake and things like that, it's a lot more difficult to balance and hit you with that emotion, because how you make someone feel emotional is you make someone you can relate to someone, and the easiest way to relate to someone is to make it feel real. And that's one of the reasons why I felt like even the moment that I cried, it had to do with aliens, but the emotion behind it felt very human and real. So that's what I really appreciated on that balance of things, in the sense of you started out immediately in this movie with a sense of realism with the Voyager satellite that we all know has been launched into space and is currently, again, light years away. And you actually take quite a while to get into the aliens. You have Elio getting sent off to boot camp. You have, and that's another thing that I actually really liked, is the like bullies of this movie. I actually felt like it was really realistic. It wasn't just like 7-year-olds being like jerks. They actually had
it made complete sense.
Because here's the thing. The reason that the crash out originally happens in this whole fight that leads to Elio getting the black eye, it's Elio's fault. Elio caused all of this. They came, those two friends whose names are escaping me, came because Elio had advertised a ham radio club that they were both interested in coming to. Now, granted, the one like blonde-haired friend that's like supposed to be like the harder one, it felt a little bit more like he wasn't as interested in it, but he still came. He still came with an interest. He still showed active interest in this. And Elio is the one who pushed them out, and then that led to them getting mad.
Right. I think that the nice change up is that they're not, when you look at it objectively, they're not bullies. They're just kids who feel like they're getting justice for somebody who kind of wronged them. Because like you said, it was Elio's fault that all that kind of happened. But it was very much so I like the idea that they're not just straight up bullies. Like Luca, there was a straight up bully. That was the villain. He was like the big town bully, you know, he mean to everybody. These kids weren't mean at first. Again, like the kid wasn't exactly put on by the idea of the ham radio club, but they also weren't exactly like, you know, oh, we want to bully this kid because he wants to start a hand radio club. But no, like they went because they thought that this is what that was, and they only ended up bullying Elio because they got in trouble. And it's almost like a brotherly spat type thing. Like if you get into an argument with your brother, you're gonna get like some comeuppance from that. And that's kind of like a poor choice of words to describe what happens in Elio, but you get what I mean. And so I do really appreciate that aspect. But they get the whole thing happens. They fail to contact, or Elio fails to contact the aliens, tries again. They get caught. And Elio gets into what is actually a really well acted, voice acted scene between Elio and his aunt. That sets up the whole rest of the course of the movie and sets up the final emotional beat of the film. And it leads to one of the funniest shots of the movie. After the big argument scene at the base, the aunt's like, "Oh, stay here. I'm going to watch this." And the guy in the chair, you know, the big nerd guy, he's like, "Oh, I've been tracking aliens. We received this." You know, my favorite shot in this movie is actually when Elio overhears like, "Oh, he kind of caught a glimpse of an alien again." And, you know, they open the door starts to close. You see the door stop and he cuts down and Elio's face is just like, let me in the room. I gotta get in. And I'm like, no, that's funny. That's accurate. I was dying laughing.
This movie definitely has quite a few like laugh out loud moments, in my opinion, where like I actually was like, I didn't feel like I had to force a laugh. Like I do think there are jokes that didn't hit. I think that happens with literally every single movie that's out there. But I do still feel like there were a lot of jokes as an adult going to see this movie. Young adult, but still an adult going to see this movie, I still felt like I could laugh and I didn't feel forced to laugh.
No, there were some pretty good laugh out loud moments, and I most of that comes from Gorman, but Gorman was is it Gorman or Gorman? I always get the name wrong.
It's Glordon.
Glordon, thank you. Glordon. I think it's Glordon.
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 I think you're right. I think it's Glordon.
I think it's pronounced Glordon. Anyway,
because his dad's Grygon.
Yeah,
Lord Grygon.
Phenomenal.
The names of these characters are as ridiculous as alien names can be. I mean, the liquid supercomputer's name, I'm looking at it now. It's just ooh. That's just the name that's written down. It's like 7 O's.
Well, that was one of those jokes in the film where I was like, that's cute. But why did we need that? What was the point? It was just a thing for the kids to laugh at, because I'm sure I'm gonna walk into church at some point next week and a kid's who saw Elio is gonna make the joke and he's just gonna shout loud, "Guys, my name is Ooh." I'm like, okay, well, clearly they saw that movie. It happened after the Minecraft movie. I walked into a service and all of a sudden all the kids are shouting at me, "Say I'm Steve, say it, say the line, say chicken jockey." I'm like, okay, well, kids. So I'm sure that's what that joke is. But you know, the whole rest of the movie leading up to the aliens abducting him, it's all really well paced. It's really well done. I like the emotional setup of the idea that the aunt just doesn't know how to handle Elio, and so instead of trying to understand him or trying another method of reaching, she just kind of like pushes off as like, here, try this, and gets him out of her life because that she doesn't know what to do. She's almost scared to try to figure it out.
Well, because one of the things with her, and I think again, I like these feel like real human characters. They feel like real human emotions because one of the reasons why Elio gets so mad is because he overhears his aunt Olga talking about how this isn't the life that she wanted. This isn't the life that she wanted for herself.
Right.
That's a totally reasonable thing to feel. This is not her kid. Granted, it is still family and she still loves him, and that's obvious, but I think it is still a totally valid thing to be like, I'm in presumably her late 20s, early 30s, if I had to guess, still like early in life. She didn't want to have a kid. She was very career focused, clearly. Like, this is not what she wanted for herself, and it was forced upon her. But she's still trying. She doesn't know how, though, because it happens so unexpectedly. Like, typically when you're a parent, you have about 9 months between the confirmation that you're going to be a parent to when you have this kid, on average.
Yeah.
That is 9 months that you can spend reading up on things, asking friends, having conversations, asking other family members. Presumably, there's not a lot of other family involved in this situation. There's no mention of grandparents. There's no mention of anything. Presumably, it's just the two of them. So she doesn't have many people to lean on how to get through this. So that's where you see clips of her like reading the parenting book on how to deal with, I can't remember the exact term for it, but it was essentially like an eccentric child, how to deal with an eccentric child. Because that's the things that you do. Like, it's showing that she's putting an effort, but I still think that line of "this isn't the life that I wanted for myself" is still very valid.
Did you ever realize, like, I know you're looking at the list now, so you probably know now. I didn't know this until after the film, and I was looking at the rest of the cast. I didn't know Zoe Zendaya was the aunt. I didn't know she was. Did you know that? Did you? Are you just now realizing that was Zoe Zendaya? I didn't know that. I didn't recognize her voice at all. I didn't realize it was her. I just thought that was funny because I never once realized.
I did not realize that. That is very interesting. I mean, she's in everything at this point, but
I think everything from like the argument on like to Elio getting captured, which I know we're jumping to that in a second. I think that was like the moment where I was like, okay, I'm kind of hooked. I'm hooked on this movie. Like they set up a really good idea. They set up a good premise. God, the clone birth scene, that was funny. Because he's like, all right, take his place. All right, I'll see you later. Elio knows exactly what's about to happen to him. I don't think the clone has fully recognized that he's about to get like beat up. And so
that was, oh my god, we're jumping around a little bit, like, but I because before that happens, we have the whole like he gets sent to boot camp, lasts a day, and then gets abducted by aliens, and I do really like he goes to this other planet. We get the whole exposition dump of this is the Citadel. This is like Rick and Morty style Citadel of Ricks. Like, this
oh my god, no, that was my literal thought when watching. I was like, this feels like Rick and Morty. Like, I know that's horrible to say for a Pixar film. It feels like Rick and Morty. I was like, every creature design. I'm like,
it's been done before. I mean, think of Star Wars. Think of the Senate from Star Wars. Think of what was the spacefaring RPG that everyone loved? That I'm blanking on the name of right now.
Off the top of my head,
it'll come to me eventually. Not that. Why am I? I'll look it up in a second. But yeah, it's a generic concept, but it is always an interesting one. Now, I will say you really only have like 2 main aliens that they focus on, which I think was a good decision. Obviously, you have like the whole scene where you see that there's a lot of different aliens, but I think focusing on 2, which is Helix and Questa, which were like, I mean, I think he was supposed to be a water bearer. He looked like a water bear to me. The other one was supposed to be like, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like ocean bearing creatures that look honestly exactly like she does.
Right. An angelfish almost. It's like an angelfish looking
No, it's
alien,
not an
kinda.
angelfish. There's something else for it. It's essentially like a sea cucumber, I think. I don't know.
Gotcha.
But anyways, I really liked the I really liked the whole like montage of them taking him through the Citadel. I do think one of the stupid jokes that did get a little chuckle out of me was like, "Wow, look at this water park area. This is really nice. This is the restroom."
Hmm?
And then,
Yeah.
mind you, we flash back later in the movie, and they're playing in the bathroom like it's a water park, which
Yeah.
that I found a little weird. That was a little nasty.
Well, especially after you say what it is. Like, you would think Ellie would have a line of, okay,
Yeah,
so don't go
exactly.
here. I'm
You make
like,
a whole
wait a
big
minute.
Yeah, you make a whole big point to make sure that we know that this is the restroom, just for them to like 30 minutes later in the movie be playing in it
It,
like it's a
it's one of those,
slide.
again, it's another one of those moments where you think about it too hard and it becomes like oh wait. Again, there's a
Yeah,
thing at the end of the movie that I'm going to probably, like, once you think about it, you're like, oh wait, that kind of ruins that a little bit. Not enough to
yeah.
like hate it, but you'll see what I mean when we get to the end of it. But continue. Yes, exploring the Citadel.
Yeah, so yeah, we explore the Citadel. I really liked the visuals. I love the idea of a liquid supercomputer. I know again we
Yeah.
made fun of the name of like ooh or whatever, but like the idea of a liquid supercomputer being very
Yeah.
interesting. Things of that,
Yes.
the cloning clay, which I think had one of the funniest jokes later in the movie, in this entire
Yeah.
movie that was built up from the cloning clay, and we'll get to that later. But
Right.
I just really like how they build out they don't need to build out a universe. They need to just build out one thing, and that's what they do. They build out that
Right.
this is the Citadel. We don't need to be introduced to every single alien. We don't need to be introduced to all these different. No, we're introducing you to this Citadel. We're introducing you to these basically two aliens that are going to be the main ones, and
Right.
opening you up to the idea that there's more here without you feeling the need to get more.
Sure. Um. Yeah, because then obviously the whole bit after that is, they send the clone in to do its job. I again got a chuckle because Elio turns away as the portal closes because he knows exactly what's about to happen.
Yep.
It's really funny. But so you get that whole bit, and then you're introduced to Brad Garrett as the villain, who Brad Garrett has one of the most iconic voices ever. I throw him up there with somebody like Patrick Warburton as far as like, okay, he's got like a really deep voice. Everybody knows his voice instantly when you hear it.
Mhm.
And I love Brad Garrett and everybody loves Raymond. I always thought he was very funny in that. He's in actually a pretty fair amount of other Pixar movies too. This is, I think, his biggest role for Pixar though, because he's in Finding Nemo. He's the pufferfish in Finding Nemo, and then he is
Oh, okay.
he's one of the chefs, I'm pretty sure, in Ratatouille.
Hmm.
He might be in Incredibles, but I don't know. I don't remember him being in there, but somebody I think told me he was. But
Yeah.
this isn't his first time in Pixar. He's been around. Uh, but this is definitely his biggest role, and I think that he had such a his voice is kind of just perfect for this role, for this
Yeah.
warlord alien dad who, it's also really interesting because he is the villain in the movie. I also don't really see him as like a villainous character, really. Like I
So
don't like
that's one thing
it's
that
interesting.
I think that's another thing that I love so much about this movie is
Yeah,
there is not a single character in this movie, even as brief as we get them, that to me feels one note, that feels
yeah,
black or white, that feels generic. I think the
right,
closest that you get to that is the blonde-haired bully, but
yeah,
even still, you can tell that there's still something in him that doesn't necessarily. Again, it feels more like a justified anger than a just being mean to be mean. Now he's taking it too
right,
far, but again, they're like what 7 to 10 years old. Like that's just how kids are.
right,
So like it still makes sense in the context of their age and what have you. And so the
right,
dad character Grygon, obviously he's introduced talking to the Citadel. very like, oh, I have a bunch of weapons, I should rule, that type of thing. And that's where he starts out feeling very generic on like, oh, of course, he's the one guy with all the powerful weapons. He wants to take over. Case closed. You think it's going to be at the, and that's why, like, and we'll get to again the end of where I actually cried during this movie, and why I felt like I really like this villain, and I'd actually rank it on the higher end of Pixar villains for sure.
Yes, for sure.
Just because of it wasn't a case of evil villain gets defeated by force, end of story. It was he felt very natural in the sense of how he was defeated. And
he probably
so
doesn't. I think the thing that I like, and this is what I like about a lot of really well done villains, is that he doesn't see himself as a villain. And if you really look at it deeply, he isn't. He is just a person trying to lead this place the best he knows how, lead this
he's a
clan, lead this
product of
ship,
the
be the
culture
best
he was
father.
raised in.
Yes, that too. And it's just like it's an interesting comparison from somebody like, Hans in Frozen, which isn't Pixar, but I'm just giving you another Disney twist villain like concept of, oh, he's straight up evil. Like that's the ending twist. It's like, oh, you're evil. He's evil.
Yeah.
Here it's different, and he doesn't just take over the Citadel. This is again getting ahead a little bit, but I'm just giving an example. He doesn't just take over the Citadel because he is evil. He's doing it because
his son was kidnapped.
His son was kidnapped.
Well, yeah,
and
ultimately, he does want to rule them, but it's more of a like he wants to have a place with the Citadel. His whole line is like, oh well, this is the place where all the greatest minds come to congregate. Am I not one of the like? Why am I not included? And their whole idea is that exclusivity because he's more violent and they're more on the neutral side of things. But ultimately, he just wants to be with them because he feels like he belongs there.
He feels like an outsider, similar to how Elio feels. It's not directly ever shown, but that's kind of what it is. Like this entire group is viewed as an outsider to the peaceful community that's there, even though they want to be involved and they want to be included. And there's an interesting comparison once we get to once they put Glorden or clone Glorden once he goes in the suit. There's an interesting comparison I want to talk about later when we get to that. But they're all scared of big bad Brad Garrett. Who wouldn't be? He is a scary dude. And they're like, hey, let's send somebody to go do this peace treaty thing because we can't just up and run again. And Elio's like, yeah, I'll do it. Sure, why not? I'm the leader of Earth. I can do this. And he's sent along on his merry way, and that leads to one of the the strangest interactions ever between two characters. Elio's trying his hardest to bond with Brad Garrett, and Brad Garrett's like, oh yeah, I totally get this guy. It's great. And then Elio says one weird thing, and it's like, oh, well, that's it. He's evil. He's gonna be evil.
And so I want to go back a little bit because I want to talk about my least favorite joke in this entire movie. It's the one joke that I feel like they thought they cooked with it and they just really didn't. And that was when Elio first introduces himself as to where he's from. He's asked to like introduce himself and he says, oh, I'm Elio. Like, and he's nervous. So he says, Earth. And that's how they like tag his planet. And that's brought up multiple times throughout the movie of like, oh, he's from Earth. I thought that was the dumbest joke ever. I thought this is a citadel of the smartest. How do you not know what planet you just went to? How are you? He has said Earth every other time after that. They are the only ones saying Earth. And for a planet of supposed geniuses and like the smartest people and rulers of their planets or whatever, I know it's a nothing joke and I shouldn't be that upset about it. And I'm not. I just wanted to mention it because it just felt kind of forced and stupid.
Well,
I thought it was like a nothing joke.
Yeah, and they have a very similar joke in the same exact movie with the okay, bye, I love you. It's like, they think that's how he says goodbye. Except I think that joke's pulled off a lot better because he never once says goodbye any other way. Right. Like he actively calls home Earth multiple times and they still call it Earth. Like, no,
Correct.
he has said this. The okay, bye, I love you joke is different because he never specifically corrected and said, no, it's just bye.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he never corrected them, so it's a bit different. But it's a very similar type of joke, and it's an interesting comparison between the two because it's literally the exact same joke, just told in a very different way. One's mediocre, one actually works, and it works really well.
Yeah. Well, and so going back to what I was actually gonna like harp on what I actually really liked about this interaction is you're right. They start bonding Grigon and Elio on like fatherhood, and Elio lies about having kids and things like that. And Elio can insult and kind of like try and push Grigon into different directions all he wants, and it gets on him a little bit, and he makes some slip ups. What actually gets him upset and what ultimately stops the negotiations is when Elio refers to him as a bad dad. That's
Yeah.
when it ends. And it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with him being a ruler and his violence, right? It has to do with him being a dad. And I think that right there shows the actual true nature of the villain of this movie. And I use villains in
Right.
quotes very specifically because, again, at no point does this villain feel evil for the sake of evil. It feels like
Right.
he is a product of the society he was raised in by his
Right.
parents and their parents and whatever have you. But you can tell that he has made himself into this because he felt needed to, but ultimately
Sure.
fatherhood is what matters to him, and that's what actually pushes his buttons, which gives you a hint into again how he's ultimately defeated.
He's basically saying, don't insult my parenting. Like that, like I'm doing the best I
Yeah,
can.
insult
And
my
again,
society, insult everything you want, but don't insult
right.
my parenting.
Well, and it again harkens back to the ants because Elio's talking about how Elio, like in a deeper meaning there, even if he doesn't directly do it, he is referencing his aunt. Like, oh, sometimes you can't be the best parent figure, and he gets upset about it because he does try his best. So don't insult the parenting, don't insult this. Like, I am doing the very best I can to make it work. And
Yeah.
so again, just another comparison, that Elio gets to learn through the leader. And I think that, again, there's one more that's like specifically really nice that I didn't even really think about until after the movie, which it's really easy and you can think about it. I just didn't think about it until after, which is a really nice comparison between the two groups, the human and the aliens. But again, we'll get to that when we actually get to that moment. But this was one of my weirdest complaints. Brad Garrett takes Elio prisoner, right? He puts him in this dungeon, and then there's just a skeleton in there. You mean to tell me you didn't feed your prisoners and you just let them die in the cell? You mean to tell me that you're not just gonna, like, wouldn't it make more sense to just execute them if you're gonna kill? Like, that's cruel, just to let them rot in a cell.
I did feel that joke was a little unnecessary for the fact of like why did we need to have this skeleton? I agree that it kind of like the
It's the broader
Grigon that we
implication.
know doesn't feel like the type of person that would do that.
Yes.
Maybe like,
Yes.
and maybe it's to tell us that he is the type of person that would do this, and that there is that sense of like this is the part of him that is leaning into the product of his upbringing. But I actually agree with you where we had the whole skeleton thing, and I did think of like, okay, this felt a little like unnecessary.
Right.
You
Just let
could
him
have
be
just
in a
had it
prison.
be a prison cell
Well,
that still would be
like
intimidating.
2 seconds later, he escapes through the top of the hole to go find, Glormand. And, he's not in that cell for very long because then you just don't need the skeleton. It's just unnecessary
Yeah,
at that point.
the easiest to escape from cell in the entire
Yeah.
world. Now,
Well,
granted, he
they
has
didn't.
the anti-grav disc, but at the same
Right.
time,
They
like,
weren't expecting that. They didn't know that. But no, you're absolutely right. Like if somebody was tall enough, they could just like, whoop, I'm gonna shimmy my way through
yep.
now.
I mean, honestly, you could step on the bench, get a running jump in the small space that you have, and probably launch yourself and pull yourself up. Like, that's how
Right.
easy to escape from this cell is.
But Elio, he goes through the whole chamber. He goes through all these different things. The alarms are going off. Oh, prisoner escape, whatever. And he runs into Glorman, which, the first thing Glorman does sets up the very end of the movie, which is you think he's going to eat Elio by wrapping him in these webs. No, he's swaddling him because his mother always made him feel safe by being swaddled, which is obviously what his father does at the end of the movie to comfort him. Which I loved that. In that moment, you don't
it was a
know
really
what that
nice
means.
setup.
It's a nice payoff to something that you don't really expect. Everything with Glorman in this movie, I really appreciated.
It's Glorden. There's no M.
Glorden. Oh my God, Glorden. I don't know why I keep saying the other way. Glorden, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a dumb movie anyway. Nobody likes this movie. That's the review. Go away. No. But everything they do with that character is just so sweet and so innocent and so pure. He was probably my favorite part of the movie just because I liked the way they set up his character, the idea that he's just a kid, and he doesn't want to be in his father's footsteps. He doesn't want to be what his father is. And he's always been so scared to tell his father what he wants to be. And I just like the way they set up his character. He has some really funny moments. The whole bargaining chip aspect. He's so excited to be a bargaining chip, and he doesn't know exactly what it means.
I think to a certain bargaining chip.
Well, I think to a certain extent, Elio doesn't even know what a bargaining chip is.
Again, he and one thing that I found that it was another joke that was used a few times that I think was hit or miss, but most of it was hit. Was that Infinity Dictionary thing that knew everything, and every time it'd be like, "Do you want to know the secrets of the universe?" And Elio would be like, "Screw that," because why would Elio's what again 7 to 10 years? Why would he care about the secrets of the universe? That's not something a kid would care about. Like he's gonna want to know what he wants to know in the moment. He only cares about what's gonna get him to the next step. He does not even know he doesn't even know enough to care about what the secrets of the universe and the meaning of life is. Like, what have you? So he consults that whole infinity thing for like negotiation tactics, and I like how he writes it down on his hand or whatever. And the big thing that he leans into when all else fails was the bargaining chip. And that I thought that was like a really, really funny, like, I'm a bargaining chip, Dad. Like neither of them know what they're doing. Neither of them know how to navigate this, but ultimately here's another thing that I think tells you a lot about the whole, like, again, villain of this movie is I think it's very easy to see through the fact that this isn't an actual like deadly hostage situation, whatever. However, that's his son. He can't take a chance on that. Whether this is a real hostage situation or not, he doesn't want to assume wrong and his son get killed because he's not willing to put up with these negotiations. So while I think it's very easy to see through, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that this is the most obvious hoax in the world, that he's not actually a because that doesn't matter. Because on that 1% chance that it is, and on that 1% chance that Elio is crazy enough to do something, then he just lost his son. And that is the worst possible outcome
for him. And just going further down the rabbit hole, because everything from pretty much Elio escaping the ship to the bargaining chip like being revealed, like, I have your son, so good, so funny. There's so many great just moments within that build character, and it's very sweet. I love the idea that Elio's going through the hole to get to the ship, and all of a sudden Glorden's like, wait, oh yeah, this is the lava hole, this is where lava goes. I'm not lava proof. I'm like, oh, you're not? Why did you say that? I'm like, oh God, oh no.
It's that naivety. It's that kid's naivety. They're both kids who aren't going to know any better.
It's sweet, and I really appreciate stuff like that and moments like that. Now, I mean, not cutting back to Earth for a second, but I'm going to cut back to Earth for a second. This whole time, the aunt grows more and more suspicious of this replacement clone who just randomly, like, all of a sudden is like, oh, I'm I'm gonna do these dishes, or I'm gonna make dinner, or this or that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to bring this up now, and this might be jumping ahead a little bit. I don't really have much more to say about it. I love the scene where, I can say this much first before I get into it, but I love, the big scene between Elio and Glorden where they're, they go play with each other. They have a fun time after the bargaining chip scene. And then they have the whole heart to heart of, I don't really want to do this. I don't want to be this, whatever.
Yeah.
It's really nice. My favorite comparison in this whole movie, after Elio comes up with the idea of, oh, you don't have to go back. Let me clone you and give your dad the clone. And they put the clone in the big suit. His dad's like very proud, and they're walking back towards the ship. And you notice that the dad shoots the clone because the dad realizes that's not his son. And he knows because a father knows. Something that I really love is that the aunt catches on to the fact that Elio is also a clone because a parent knows their kid. And even though the aunt isn't technically Elio's biological parent, she's been with him long enough to know, like, that's not Elio. There is something wrong.
Yep.
Let me investigate this. And I love that they're showing both those comparisons with both the aunt and Brad Garrett, because it really does.
I love how you keep calling him Brad Garrett because you just can't care enough to remember.
Here's the thing. I could ask for the character's name, but I'm going to forget it 5 seconds later anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
Rygon.
I'm going to forget. I already forgot it. But so it's the comparison between those two that are really sweet. And I think that once like that came to fruition, and once I realized like, oh, they were setting that up, and that's a really cool idea. I fell in love with that idea and that concept. I thought it was brilliant.
So this is when I cried. This is actually specifically the scene with Glorden and Grygon. When you have the whole thing of a father always knows, or again, back with the aunt, a parent always knows. Because like you mentioned, Olga isn't Elio's real mom. She's just acting as it. And one of the big things that's a through line with this whole movie that we've touched on is Elio doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere, and he doesn't feel like he feels like he's ruining Olga's life, and that his aunt doesn't care about him. And that's obviously not the case, but he's a dumb kid who doesn't understand the complexities of reality. And so, of course, he would think that overhearing that one line about this isn't the life that I wanted means that you hate me, and that you never loved me, and that you wouldn't care. And I love that there's that whole emotional through line of, I wasn't sure how they were going to reveal the whole like, oh, he's a clone, but I feel like they did it with perfection. I feel like this is one of the best parts of this movie is Olga being immediately suspicious of Elio. Like, you can tell in the car ride that she's suspicious. Like, she is immediately suspicious and immediately starts investigating. Same. I mean, it doesn't even take Grygon 30 seconds before he knows that that's not his son. Like, they know immediately. And I love that, because of course they would, because there's things about a person. Like, I would hope that if I got cloned, you would be able to tell the difference pretty quickly, even, and we're not even related. And same with you, because there's things that you can just tell are just not that person.
This is my second complaint with the whole film. And it's more of it's a minor complaint, because it's something about the potential of what they could have done that actually would have improved everything like to a superior level. And that's the idea that you see the aunt suspicious, but you don't reveal that she already knows that Elio's a clone. You don't have her go into the room following the hair. Like, picture this. Imagine you didn't get that scene. You see that she's suspicious, but you don't get that scene. And Elio's on the beach. The real Elio is on the beach. She sees the aunt with the clone having a fun time. And then it's revealed in the light that she's looking for Elio. She knew that was a clone. She figured it out on her own. It then harkens back to what Brad Garrett said with a parent always knows, a father always knows, the aunt always knows. It has such an emotional weight to it for as the audience to then be let in of she was looking for Elio this whole time. She knew that he wasn't a clone, similar to what happened not more than 10 minutes ago in the movie with a father and a son knowing that that's not his son, it would have added such a weight, and it also would have done something which I love with a lot of films, which is it lets the audience guess, or it keeps them surprised on their toes a bit more. I think too many films nowadays, we often are just spoon-fed everything, and that to a certain extent is the case here. And this is why I'm saying it's a minor complaint, because I like what they did with it. I just know if they had done that and they had revealed it all on the beach, that would have been so nice and it would have been really cool.
I mean, I don't know if I really agree with you on that. I mean, I think that I thought they did it the best that they could have. They had the whole like investigator pin board with the strings attached. Like I thought that was really funny. I thought that that whole thing with all the way back with like, okay, this really suspicious with him doing the dishes and all of that. I thought that really worked. But again, you also have to remember this works because this is intended for children. Maybe your version would be really good, but I feel like that would have gone way over kids' heads and they would have been like, wait, but why? Like, they would not have felt the emotional beat as much. And that's the target audience of this movie. I can't say that for certain, but I think that they did it really well for the fact that your target audience for this movie is like 10 to like what, 7 to 15 years old.
I think it depends on what you consider to be a target audience, because I've always considered Pixar's target audience to be family oriented. Maybe it's not specifically teenagers, but it leans in heavily up. This is for kids and it's for adults, but specifically it's for families. This is meant for people who, want to sit. And I feel like, yeah, even though it's more so a kid thing, if you're going to make it a family oriented film, which is what Pixar pretty much is built on, you should be able to add those moments for the adults, because the kids aren't also going to hate it. Like, it's not something they're going to hate. They may not be as wowed by it, but it's something that, and once again, it's not spoon-fed. And I will even back this up by saying I still agree with what I'm saying, because then it gives the kids a chance to think. And even if they don't get it right away, it's something that they can think about, and they're not constantly being spoon-fed by a film that, doesn't need it. Again, spoon-fed's a bad word to use, because I don't hate what they did. I never said that. I just think that my other way of what I thought they could do is just out of this world. Out of this world. It's a fantastic idea, and just a missed opportunity. But it's such an emotional scene. It's such a really good scene on the beach. They do a great job with it. And then Gordon's ship crashes on Earth. Got there in record time and record speed, by the way, might I add.
I mean, they have supersonic light speed travel like Star Wars. I mean, it's whatever, forgivable. Like,
right. But he obviously makes it to Earth. Elio knows exactly what it is, what crashed there. It's his fault that Gordon is basically there, because Gordon doesn't know what he's doing. He's a kid, and he activates the ship accidentally, which leads to the funniest scene in the entire film. The clone sacrificing himself so that they can get through the door. And
this was one of the most like unexpectedly like, oh my god, I can't believe they're doing this, but so hilarious scenes. That it was a horror scene. It was a genuinely like horror movie scene.
Like bodies twitching, like the full 9 yards. Like they do all of it, and it works so well, because it's funny. After the end of that, it's funny to watch all these guards come over like, oh my god, what's happening? What is this?
You also have like the Terminator thumbs up as he like disintegrates into.
No, I was dying. I leaned over to our friend while I was watching. I was like, oh my god, they're doing the Terminator. Oh my god, they did the Terminator. Oh my god. I'm like, that's so funny. But it's such a clever use and a clever thing. Like, again, this is what I'm saying, where I'm like, when Pixar actually tries, they can create some pretty clever stuff. And I think that's one of those moments where you're watching a movie and you're going, that was clever. They did a good job. They actually put time and thought into it to give a good product like that. But then Elio and Olga get to the ship. Elio opens it, and after, oh god, I also love this. The aunt learns to speak. What was it? Elioese? What do they speak? What is
Elioese, yeah, Elioese, whatever
Elioese?
it
I think
is,
is what he
yeah.
calls. Learns to speak Elioese, and is like, throw your helmet on this count. I'm
Pretends
like,
to
that's
be an
funny.
alien to throw off the
Proceeds to attack the army, which leads into my final complaint at the end of the movie, which we'll get to.
The fact that she
But
got away scot-free with breaking into a military base, assaulting military personnel with zero repercussions.
No, we're talking about this now. I'll just get into this now. The end of the movie, they're on the beach holding hands. It's a very emotional moment. But when you think about the broader thing of it, they just committed treason. Where are you going after that?
In reality, Elio would end up in a foster care system or with any surviving family, and Olga would be in jail, like locked away in jail.
Well, I mean, to be fair, who's to say that didn't happen? Elio's seen playing on the beach with the one kid. Who's to say that didn't happen? We just didn't see it happen.
True. Very true.
But moving on, we get to I guess the biggest action set piece of really the only action set piece of the film, which is them trying to get through the asteroid field. Which I thought it was fine. I wasn't blown away by it. I thought it was fine.
Well, so this is one thing that I was gonna say. This is my only real I don't even want to call it a complaint. It was just kind of a whatever. I really do like how they bring back the guy who originally discovered the alien thing to help guide them through. I thought that was really funny. I thought that worked for me. The one thing that did not work for me and felt like an unnecessary padding out of time and made zero sense, but is kind of like a whateverness. Like, why would you care that it doesn't need to make sense? Was when you get all the people from the foreign countries chiming in to help out. To navigate.
I'm like, that
what? You didn't need that.
Sense.
Cut that out. It was not necessary. Get them out of there. Navigate through the asteroid field. Have the guy help them. They're done. Having all the people from the four, it made no sense. It was only there to pad out time. Whatever. But that's my only again, it doesn't draw down the movie necessarily, but it just felt like a whatever. This was unnecessary.
Sure.
But anyway, yeah, we get all that. And we kind of already talked about the end of this movie, but I really do like the whole oh, it's time to put you into your armor. They make the clone. You have the added suspense of Glordon not being able to handle the cold of being away from having his disc or away from his planet because they're a heat-centric species, which I actually really appreciate because I feel like it adds some depth to these aren't just one-note aliens. No, he needs to be hot, he needs to be warm because that's the nature of his biology, and it added some depth to these aren't just all generic aliens that are all just copy-paste but look a little different. It felt like there's an additional layer to it. So I really did like that. But yeah, they get through, and then we kind of already talked about the end scene, but you have the whole put the clone in the bodysuit. You have the whole dad always knows and that emotional beat. I cried. The whole dad always knows. Of course I would know. That got to me. That made me emotional. I really did like that.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I again the whole last stretch of the film, regardless of the ending implications of you committed treason, it's it's handled very, very well, and it left me with a very happy feeling. Again, the emotional beat for me didn't exactly hit as much as I wanted it to. I don't know exactly what made it that. It could have been the buildup. It could have been just the way they executed that ending. I don't fully know, but I still walked away feeling some sort of emotion, at least being content and happy. At least enough to come on the podcast and say, "Oh, I didn't hate this. I actually really enjoyed it." That in my mind, that's a positive because Pixar's track history recently has been very hit or miss. So I guess that's the best way to say is I really do like the way they ended it and wrapped it up. I'll go ahead and say my final thoughts, just because now that we've approached the end, I can just go ahead and wrap up my final bit and say whatever. But Elio as a whole, it surprised me. It surprised me just how much like time and effort was put into it. And it surprised me
Yeah.
just how much care the material was handled with. Because again, a lot of Pixar movies recently, Elemental, Turning Red, certain extents onward. Again, I liked Soul and Luca, so I'm not really gonna rope them into this. They were all fine, but they weren't great. Inside Out 2 to a certain extent was also just fine. I really enjoyed Inside Out 2, but overall it was still just fine. It wasn't anything really special. Not like the first movie was. But they've had a hit or miss track history with films. Elio is completely different. And it feels creative. It feels original. That's the big takeaway. This film's original.
Yeah.
We don't get many original films like this again. And we don't get films like this anymore that really have like a really nice message that you get to take away and that you get to really chomp into as the film goes on. And it leaves you with a note that, you just feel really happy and content. And so I'm really happy that I saw this film. Again, if you're somebody who has kind of given up on Pixar or just doesn't go to the movies anymore, change that attitude. Go watch this right now because it is worth your time. I can definitely promise you that. But that's pretty much it. You can go on. I've pretty much said my piece.
I'll wrap up my thoughts here as well. I don't want to like reiterate everything that I've already said or what you just said. I think the two biggest takeaways for me is one, this did feel very original. Obviously, it reused a lot of story beats that we've heard a million times, but added a nice emotional spin to it. And I think even when watching this movie, the biggest takeaway for me that made me really appreciate this movie was and I already mentioned this, but I'll reiterate it. None of these characters felt one note or generic. There was depth behind every single character. There was no black and white. There was no, every character that mattered had a depth to them that I feel like even some bigger picture movies and bigger picture TV shows don't get. And I really, really liked that. So yeah, like that's like Carson said, and like I said at the start of my review, if you were on the fence of this movie and this sways you and you want to go watch it, or hopefully you've already watched it by the time you're listening to this, like I don't think this movie's going to do blockbusters. As Carson already mentioned, it hasn't so far with the ending of the opening weekend, but I hope that at least if this movie comes to streaming, more people watch it and appreciate this movie.
Give it a chance. Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, a few things to wrap up this episode. We are hitting the end of the summer anime, or the spring anime season. I posted on Thursday, I believe it was, my 12 anime that I will be reviewing every single week on the short form content. So if you're at all interested in our anime content, watch the short form. Carson is still supposed to send me his trailer that he still hasn't sent me of what he will be reviewing for the next month. That will go up at some point when he actually sends it to me. Hopefully this reminder reminds him to send it to me. Maybe while I'm doing the outro, maybe that's something you can do since you don't have to talk during the outro. But I'll be doing that. So yeah, we will have a lot of short form content that's going to be rolled out. Carson will be posting stuff. I will be posting stuff. I've had some ideas on maybe long form videos that aren't podcasts that I might record. I'll talk with Carson about that later. Just stuff that I've been mulling over. So keep an eye out for that if that happens. But other than that, Carson, you have anything you want to say? I know you said you don't have to talk for the outro, but get me that video sent out at the very least.
I don't know what you're talking about. You've had that video the whole time. Clearly, I don't just look at your phone right now and see that I've already sent it to you.
It still hasn't come through. Funny enough.
That's Are you sure? Oh no, yeah, it still hasn't. No, I had a fun time talking about this week. I'm excited for next week. So
yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, because I almost forgot to take us into this outro. Next week will be F1. Heard some pretty positive reviews of this so far. Koi was really high on this with his preview that he did. And on top of that, we will be bringing back our 2-topic reviews, because we will be talking about the first 3 episodes of Ironheart, because they're doing this in 2 3-episode drops. And we will be talking about F1. So it'll probably be back to that, maybe closer to 2.5 hour long episodes, since we will have more to talk about. And these last 2 episodes have been, last 3 episodes, I think, have been just like one main topic. So yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for listening, so much for watching. We have been the Nerdy Nimrods. You can find us on all streaming platforms: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, literally every single one of them. You can also find us for our 3-minute reviews and other short form content on all the short form content platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts at Nerdy Nimrods. Me and Carson filmed a few special things in person that will be going up over the course of the next month and a half. One thing that we did not mention is, unfortunately, we will not be going to New York Comic Con like we had mentioned. I take full responsibility for that. I was flying back the day that the tickets went for sale. They sold out in like 2 hours and I could not buy them. So we will not be going. However, I, by myself, most likely, will be going to Anime NYC in August. I actually am going to 2 different conventions in August. I'm going to Otakon here in DC, and I will be going to Anime NYC in August as well. So you will be getting plenty of content while I am at those. Unfortunately, solo content. Maybe with some friends that make some cameos, though, because I might have some friends that join me for those conventions. But yeah, look forward to that. But yeah, with that being said, drop a follow, drop a like, let us know what your thoughts on Elio are in the comments, or if there's anything you want to hear us talk about. We're open to any topics. And yeah, as always, everyone, stay nerdy.